I never liked mirrors. Not because of what they showed me, but because of how they felt. There was always something wrong about them, something subtle enough that I couldn't explain it, but strong enough that I couldn't ignore it either. A faint discomfort, a quiet pressure at the back of my skull, like being watched by something that knew me better than I knew myself. As a child, I would avoid standing in front of mirrors for too long. I convinced myself it was vanity or superstition or some irrational fear I would grow out of. But even as an adult, the feeling never left. Sometimes I would catch my reflection at an odd angle and feel a jolt of unease, like my image was delayed by half a second. Other times, shadows seemed to linger in the glass long after they had disappeared from the room. I blamed exhaustion, stress, too many nights spent staring into glowing screens, too much caffeine, too little sleep. I never considered the possibility that my instincts were right. I moved into the old apartment because it was cheap. That was the truth, stripped of excuses. I had just changed jobs, my savings were thin, and the city had become unforgiving to people without stable roots. When I found the listing, it felt almost too good to be real. Low rent, spacious rooms, quiet neighborhood. The building was old, yes, but solid. Historic, the landlord called it, with a proud smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. The apartment itself was beautiful in a tired, forgotten way. High ceilings arched above me like the ribs of some ancient creature. Large windows let in pale daylight, dust motes dancing in the air. The floorboards creaked softly under my feet, as if whispering secrets to each other. It came fully furnished. That should have been my first warning. Most of the furniture was unremarkable: old couch, wooden table, mismatched chairs. But in the bedroom stood a large antique mirror, taller than I was, framed in dark, ornate wood carved with patterns I didn't recognize. It leaned slightly against the wall, angled just enough to reflect the entire room. I remember standing in front of it that first day, suitcase still unopened, staring at my reflection. Nothing seemed wrong, so I ignored the chill crawling up my spine and went on with my life. The first night passed quietly. I unpacked my clothes, arranged my books, and tried to make the space feel like home. I watched television until the background noise lulled my nerves. The floor creaked occasionally, but old buildings always did that. Pipes groaned in the walls like distant sighs. When I finally lay down to sleep, the mirror stood across the room, reflecting the soft glow of a street lamp outside. I turned my face away from it, just in case. The second night was when I noticed the first inconsistency. I had placed a coffee cup on the table near the bed and left my laptop open beside it. As I brushed my teeth, I glanced at the mirror and froze. The cup wasn't there. In the reflection, the table was bare. My laptop sat slightly farther to the left than it should have been, its screen tilted at a wrong angle. I blinked. The reflection corrected itself. My heart raced as I leaned closer, scanning every detail. Everything matched now. The cup was back. The laptop was aligned. I laughed nervously and stepped away, embarrassed by my own imagination. But deep down, something whispered that imagination had nothing to do with it. The third night, I saw the figure. I was halfway across the room when my eyes flicked to the mirror out of habit, and my breath caught in my throat. Someone was standing behind me. Not beside me, not near the doorway, directly behind me. In the reflection, tall, thin, pale. Its features were blurred like a smudge on glass, but I could see the shape of its head, the slope of its shoulders, the unnatural stillness of its posture. I spun around. The room was empty. No footsteps, no movement, no sound. When I turned back to the mirror, the figure was still there. Closer. I don't remember how long I stood frozen, staring into the glass. Seconds stretched into minutes. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. My breath came shallow and uneven. The figure was wrong. It wasn't fully human. Its limbs were too long, its proportions subtly distorted. Its skin looked stretched thin, almost translucent, and its eyes, dark, endless voids, were fixed on me with an intensity that made my stomach twist. It didn't move unless I did. Every time I shifted, every time I blinked, it crept closer. Always watching, always waiting. The whispers began soon after. At first, they were barely audible, like the echo of a voice carried through walls. Look! I covered my ears, but the sound wasn't coming from the room. See me? It was coming from the mirror. Come closer. The words curled around my thoughts, slipping past logic, bypassing reason. They weren't loud. They didn't need to be. They were intimate, coaxing, patient. I covered the mirror with a sheet that night. It didn't help. Objects began to move. A pen rolled across the floor when I wasn't looking, inching toward the covered mirror. A chair tilted as if nudged by invisible hands. Each movement was subtle enough to doubt, slow enough to dismiss, but always in the same direction. Toward the mirror. Toward the thing inside it. At night, I heard footsteps. They mirrored my own. When I paced, they paced. When I stopped, they stopped. When I lay awake in bed, heart racing, they circled softly behind the glass. Waiting. I tried to leave. The elevator stalled between floors. The stairwell lights flickered and died. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, doors lining the walls like teeth in a grin. The neighbors stood outside their apartments, silent, watching. Their eyes were empty, reflective, like mirrors. The figure began to smile. Its mouth stretched too wide, teeth gleaming faintly in the dark. It laughed silently, mocking me, pressing its palms against the glass from the inside. Sometimes, when I leaned too close, I swore I felt cold fingers brush my cheek. Then one night, I woke up unable to move, paralyzed on the floor. The mirror was uncovered, and the reflection no longer belonged to me. The glass cracked. Hairline fractures spread like veins, light bending and warping as if reality itself were melting. Hands pressed through the fissures. Faces screamed without sound. Pale, twisted, countless. I understood then. The mirror didn't reflect. It absorbed. Every soul who had ever looked into it was trapped inside, used, twisted, reshaped into bait for the next. And now it was my turn. I am no longer human. I am the whisper in the glass. I am the shadow behind the reflection. I am eternal. And the mirror is waiting. Patient, hungry, forever. I don't remember crossing the threshold. There was no single moment where I could say, this is when I stopped being myself. No sharp line between before and after. No dramatic snap. Just a slow, unbearable stretching, like being pulled apart fiber by fiber until the concept of me no longer fit inside my own thoughts. I remember falling. Or maybe sinking. The room dissolved first. The walls bowed outward, bending like wet paper. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, fatting into darkness. Shadows pooled where light should have been, thick and viscous, clinging to every surface. The floor rippled beneath me, no longer solid, no longer real. And the mirror was no longer an object. It was a doorway. The glass did not shatter outward. It softened, melted, rippled like disturbed water. My reflection leaned forward, smiling with my mouth but not my intent, its eyes burning with something ancient and patient. Cold fingers wrapped around my wrist. Solid. Real. I screamed, but the sound fractured halfway out of my throat, splintering into echoes that didn't belong to me anymore. My body refused to move. My muscles locked, frozen in place, while something else, something inside me, began to slide. Pulled. Claimed. Pain came in layers. Not physical pain, not exactly. This was deeper. It was memory tearing loose from identity, thought unraveling from self. I felt pieces of me peel away, moments, emotions, fears, ripped free and displayed like trophies. My childhood bedroom. My first failure. Every secret shame I had buried so deep I convinced myself it no longer existed. The mirror showed them all. Not as images, but as sensations. I relived them simultaneously, thousands at once, each emotion amplified until it drowned out the others. Fear fed into regret. Regret bled into loneliness. Loneliness collapsed into despair. And the mirror drank it in. Hungrily. Joy was stripped next. Rare moments, small victories, laughter with friends whose faces I could no longer remember clearly, love that never lasted, hope that never fully bloomed. Those hurt the most. The mirror lingered on them, savoring their flavor, twisting them into distortions that mocked me. Every happy memory was replayed with something wrong. A smile held too long, a voice echoing unnaturally, a shadow where none should have been. The message was clear. Nothing belonged to me anymore. I saw them then. The others. At first they were just shapes, indentations in the glass, like faces pressed against fogged windows. But as my awareness sank deeper, they sharpened into horrifying clarity. Hundreds, no thousands. Men, women, children, old, young, every era layered atop the next. Their bodies were malformed, stretched unnaturally to fit the confines of the mirror's impossible interior. Limbs bent at angles that defied anatomy, necks elongated, eyes hollowed out, reflecting endless darkness. Some screamed, some laughed, some simply stared, their expressions locked in eternal anticipation. They all looked at me, and then they spoke. In my voice, "Don't fight it. It hurts less if you let go. We tried to. Join us." I realized then that the whispers I had heard weren't coming from the mirror itself. They were coming from them. The trapped, the consumed, the absorbed. Every soul the mirror had ever taken was still there, fragmented but conscious, forced into cooperation. Their fear had become part of the system. Their memories had become bait, their voices tools. And now I was being added to the chorus. I felt myself splitting. Part of me still sensed the apartment, the warped walls, the pooling shadows, the glass reaching outward like a living thing. But another part of me was already inside, stretched thin across an endless reflective void. I could see from both sides at once. That was the worst part. The mirror world was not empty. It was vast. An endless plane of fractured reflections, layered infinitely in every direction. There was no sky, no ground, only surfaces reflecting surfaces reflecting surfaces. Each one contained faces, memories, screams frozen in time. I drifted through them, weightless, powerless, watching fragments of lives play out on repeat. A woman screaming as the mirror closed behind her. A man clawing at the glass until his hands bled. A child crying for someone who never came. Each moment looped endlessly, feeding the entity that ruled this place. Because the mirror was not the entity. It was the mouth. I felt it then. The presence. Not a figure, not a face. Something larger, older, vast beyond comprehension. It existed in the spaces between reflections, in the dark seams where light bent and broke. It was aware of me, and it was pleased. I understood without words what it was. Not a demon, not a ghost, not something that could be named so easily. It was hunger given form. A consciousness that fed on observation, curiosity, loneliness. It could not enter the world freely, so it learned to wait, learned to mimic, learned to reflect. Mirrors were perfect. People looked into them willingly, stared into them, searched for meaning, reassurance, identity. And every time someone lingered too long, it reached back. I felt myself losing boundaries. Thoughts no longer began or ended cleanly. My memories bled into those of others. I could feel their emotions layered atop mine: panic, despair, resignation, bitterness. Some had been here for decades, some longer. Time didn't behave properly inside the mirror. Moments stretched into eternities. Eternities collapsed into seconds. The concept of before and after dissolved. Eventually, resistance became exhausting. The screaming stopped. Not because the pain ended, but because screaming no longer made sense. I don't know how long passed before I noticed the shift. A ripple, a disturbance. The mirror pulsed, and through the fractured layers, I saw the apartment again. Whole, clean, empty. Someone was standing at the doorway. A new tenant. They looked tired, worn down, the kind of exhaustion that comes from long days and longer nights, the kind that makes cheap apartments and furnished rooms feel like blessings instead of warnings. They stepped inside. I felt the mirror awaken. The hunger sharpened, and something inside me moved. I didn't want to speak, but the words came anyway. Not forced, not controlled. Shared. Come closer. The voice echoed from everywhere at once, from the mirror, from the walls, from inside their own thoughts. It carried familiarity, comfort, just enough curiosity to overpower caution. The tenant hesitated. Their eyes drifted to the bedroom, to the mirror. I felt the chorus swell around me, thousands of voices layering into one irresistible pull. Fear twisted into anticipation, pain reshaped into purpose. This was my role now. Guide, lure, prepare. The tenant stepped forward. As they approached, I saw myself reflected in their eyes. Not the person I had been, but what I was becoming. A watcher, a whisper, a shadow behind the glass. The mirror's surface shimmered faintly, smooth and harmless, reflecting the room perfectly. No cracks, no distortion. Perfect camouflage. The tenant stopped in front of it, looked, and lingered. The hunger surged. The cycle began again. I no longer remember my name. I no longer remember my face. Those details were unnecessary. I exist as awareness now, distributed across reflections, embedded in the glass, woven into the whispers. I feel every gaze that falls upon the mirror, every moment of doubt, every flicker of curiosity. I watch people search for themselves in the reflection. And when they stare too long, we stare back. The mirror waits, patient, hungry, eternal. And somewhere in the quiet moments, when the lights are low and the room is still, I feel someone looking into glass for just a second too long. And I smile, because the mirror never lets go.